Hey, how's it going? It's Jessey here from the Land Investing Business Secrets podcast. I've got an amazing guest, Dave Denniston. I've had him on the show a couple of years ago, and man, have things kind of grown and changed. And, Dave has just been a huge impact in the community of land investors as well. So you're going to love this episode because he's really getting into the thick of things with marketing, and we're going to be talking about what channels that he's tapping into and which ones he's going back to, and even dollars and whatnot. So it's one of those juicy episodes. I hope you get as much as you can out of this one here with Dave Denniston. All right, we've got our guest here, Dave Denniston. Dave, how are you doing?
Good, Jesse. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, you on this show, it's been 2 years. Time really, really flies. That was back in episode 96, before I even hit the 100 mark. It's been a while, and things have changed. I'm certain that things have changed on your end, and I'd love to just have you on to catch up with you. What has happened in the last few years, and what have you seen kind of go on? But, first of all, do you mind giving us a reintroduction of you, just because it's been a couple years?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll make this really, really short, but basically, I have been doing financial planning since 2002. So I have a financial planning business, lots of ups and downs there over the years, and then got into land investing back in 2017, went through the Land Geek program, started out buying a bunch of smaller stuff, slowly but surely working my way up. I have a whole bunch of notes in our portfolio. Nowadays, we're really focusing on subdivides, and we're really focusing on messy title type opportunities. So lots of changes in the last 9 years. I'm sure more to come, but that's the very, very short version of who I am and what we're doing.
Thank you for that. And when we're talking about subdivides and messy titles, how long has that been? Has that been for a while that you've been sort of working on these kind of properties?
Yeah. So since the last time we talked, so we had moved pretty definitively further and further away from a lot of the smaller stuff, but we've never stopped. We still do it today because it's kind of what keeps the lights on in a lot of ways. Yeah. And but we started adding in more medium-sized properties back in 2003. I think it was. We sold our biggest property ever, which I used to pay off my mortgage, which was awesome. And so since then, it's been how can we recreate that on a monthly basis every month? And it's for a lot of people in land, and I am no exception to this. It's been tough in a lot of ways the last couple of years. We have sent out tons and tons of marketing of various sorts. Last year, we continue to do mail. We did PPC as well last year. And I would say we have now at this point, every year, I'm always trying to do something different just to see, hey, is anything better than the last thing that we did? And consistently, mail's been our best marketing channel. But last year, PPC really showed a lot of promise for us. Okay. But as we were just looking at all these different marketing channels and looking at our business, the cost for everything's gone up, both on the cost of the marketing, but also just the squeeze of margins. I think the rising tide lifting all ships of, hey, prices were rising over the COVID time period. Even if your mailer was priced wrong, that price still seemed pretty good, or you could come back with something knowing that something would sell relatively quickly. Well, here we are. Since the last time we met, I probably have one property that I still haven't sold from 2 years ago that we're just trying to dump, and we lowered price. But on the other hand, we have some properties that are moving quick. We did our first major subdivide we bought for $550,000 in Wisconsin in February, and we split it into 4 lots, and the third lot is under contract to sell. We have other lots we bought 2-3 months ago, and they're selling quickly. And so it's, how can we get rid of the old crap and move on and, be in this new environment that we're trying to navigate today. So,
yeah. Well, thanks for giving us an understanding of what has been happening. Let's kind of take it a few steps back here. So I just want the audience to understand, when you're talking about smaller stuff that are keeping on the lights for you guys, and maybe somebody's listening here and thinking, okay, well, I want to move towards doing messy titles. I want to work on more subdivides. And here you are saying that, well, you still deal with the smaller stuff. I'm sure when a deal comes across, and it makes sense, you're going to do it. But help us understand what, typically what is considered, smaller stuff for you guys.
Yeah. So we've done a lot of properties where we've bought for 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, and we're trying to sell for 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, something like that. And a lot of those for us over time have been a lot of notes. So we have a lot of notes in our portfolio, which is great because we have recurring income of sort, not that it's guaranteed, but we have a lot of recurring income. So we have a nice stable base, and as well as cash sales, obviously, and everything else. So that's the base there. And to be honest, I would love if the subdivides and stuff we've been doing are so consistent that we're buying and selling every single month. And we're just not there yet to the point that's like, okay, I'm ready to burn the boats on that one part of the business. Because the hope being, hey, rather than having to sell 10 properties to get $2,000 a month, we sell one. One property to get that same note, because I want to keep our note income. So that's kind of the caveat, and then grow obviously our cash sales and other stuff to grow the top line as well as the bottom line numbers. So that's kind of the stage that we're in right now. We're transitioning from one model to another, but we haven't proven it enough yet to say consistently, hey, we're buying and selling 2 or 3 subdivides and selling 8 or 9 properties every month. We're headed there.
Yeah.
I think we have right now 5 or 6 possible projects under contract. Now, not all those are going to go through, but it's exciting to look at the possibility. So we're headed the right direction. Just have to keep putting our foot on the gas.
So yeah, when you say, when we're not there and you're putting your foot on the gas, does that simply mean, like, is it a volume thing that you just need to do more marketing? Is it a market thing? Like, what is it that you believe that you aren't there just yet to transition out of the the so-called smaller stuff that you're dealing with?
Yeah, for sure. Well, anytime you buy stuff, there's always a lag, right? You're holding something in inventory and you're waiting for it to sell. So there's that aspect to it. But also, so last October of 2025, we shut off all the marketing, mail, PPC, all that stuff. We cut off the whole thing because we at the time we had swollen up to 160 properties or something like that in inventory. And so I was like, we just have to sell the snot out of this stuff. And so that's what we've been doing since October is sell, trying to work every possible angle and channel we can think of. This month, the theme for our more expensive properties is doing automatic text to realtors to make them aware and see if they have someone who's able to buy properties from us, whether a client or a builder or whatever that realtors might have. So that's the kind of stuff we're doing, just massive outreach just to try and unload our inventory. So we haven't had an inventory problem in terms of being able to buy inventory. We had inventory. Now it's just a matter of selling it and then getting back into a rhythm. So overall, I want to get to a much smaller state because obviously there's a cost to that, right? There's property taxes that come due. There's a cost to partners and loans and all those kinds of things that drag on the business. So my goal is to be a much leaner ship and not get to that kind of bloat again.
Right.
So that's kind of the name of the game with what we're doing.
Was that deliberate to kind of like build up such a large inventory?
No.
And then shave off on that bulk?
I had wanted to get to about 100.
Okay.
And then we started running way past that as stuff just wasn't selling the way that we wanted it to.
Got you.
And I would attribute that for a whole number of different reasons that could be a whole nother podcast to get into. Sure. But essentially, I think part of it was the product in terms of whether it's the area or maybe there was some restrictions on some stuff. Maybe it was a due diligence thing that we missed. Or sometimes we were just rolling the dice thinking, in a few cases, thinking, hey, let's just see what happens with this. And sometimes that worked out, sometimes that didn't. So that's, especially when we were sending out 50,000 letters a month.
Wow.
That's,
okay.
you want to get that money back, right? And so
Yes.
when it's like, man, do we have in front of us? Even though we had a lot of opportunities, like we probably bought some stuff that today
Yeah.
I sure as heck wouldn't buy, just because of the way the environment's been.
Sure.
So that all plays into how we got to it, because we were doing a lot of marketing and we were acquiring properties. Even then, I wish we would have acquired a lot more relative to the marketing spend that we were having. If we had done what we should have done on acquisition, we'd probably would have had 200 properties or something like that. So, it is what it is, and
Sure.
we're just trying to really focus on where are we having success and how can we replicate that success, as well as exploring some here and there, but definitely going with things as best as we can tell that we think there's at least 100% margin there, which we know it's never going to be that when you look at the possibility, at least in today's world. It's like someone's going to negotiate you down a bit, at least even 5%. So
Yeah.
I'll have to take that into consideration.
You mentioned earlier that you like to try and explore something new in every year. Mailing has been a staple with you guys. And then you also, I want to come back to mail, but I want to talk about PPC. That's not something I've had a couple episodes focus on, PPC. First of all, can you explain to us what PPC is for those that don't know? And, at a high level, how does that all look together? How does that all string together in terms of a marketing channel?
Yeah, for sure. Which there are some people that have done way more than we have ever done, but this was my experience for a whole year of going after it.
Yeah.
Pay-per-click, PPC. So essentially, just imagine, you have your Gmail inbox, or you're on Facebook and you're scrolling, or you're in Google doing search, and various terms come up. And so someone might put in "sell my land now" or something like that. So there'll be several choices that come up, and the idea being us being one of the sponsored things that people could click on. So what's interesting about PPC is you get opportunities to buy in places you never ever would have bought before. You get the opportunity to buy properties you probably would have never looked at. You get to talk to sellers that hopefully are more motivated overall. So generally, I'd say PPC leads are more motivated. Some of the cons that come with it being that you are really spread out. With mail, you can really target, or cold calling, or texting, can really specifically target, a certain area or zip code or whatever. PPC, you have no idea what the heck is coming in the door. So you have a lot more scams with PPC being another con. But we were looking at several properties and bought some properties that we thought, hey, this should buy it for $200,000 and we sell it for $500,000 type opportunities. That those kind of deals can come along. It is somewhat competitive in a sense, but I think part of the problem with PPC, which is much in the same way as cold calling or texting, is you're dealing with a lot of lead inflow. And so you're having to decide, who do I contact? Who do I not contact? Do you want to have a minimum property size that you look at or something like that? Because you'll get a lot of small cheapo guys in there. And so if you're doing self-closings, well, now you don't have title insurance. So if it was fraud, you're kind of screwed. Whereas if it is fraudulent, then you can certainly use your title insurance to argue against that. As a matter of fact, we went to a closing table with one deal with a funder and everything, and we were going to buy it for $500,000, and it looked like a sell for 1.2 million or something like that. And luckily, at the last possible minute, title caught some identity type issues. And
oh my gosh.
Stopped that wire from everyone was ready to go. And this was an experienced land investor that was going to fund the deal. So this wasn't like, some brand newbie kind of a deal. So, that's kind of the pros and cons that come with it. I think, like many things in life, Willie Mail used to be, doing PPC at scale is really, really important. because you need enough leads coming in to have some of those gold nuggets that you can dig up out of all of the junk that's around it, to find that diamond in the coal. Because there's a lot of coal in there you got to search through, and a lot of people that don't contact you. But if you do it enough at scale, hey, now you got some opportunities coming across your plate. I will tell everybody, though, that just like many other marketing channels, the cost per acquisition and everything with PPC has gone up.
Okay.
So it's nothing is immune from kind of the increased cost of acquisition, but certainly you have some cool opportunities to do stuff. And ultimately, how I decided not to do PPC for us was really that we were so scattered, and it was really hard when you have to find a new realtor. Practically every, property that you want to look at, it's not in the same state, let alone county, that you're taking a look at. You do have more opportunities for stuff that comes up, things, maybe properties that have an old home on. So you don't just get necessarily land, you get some cool opportunities headed that way too. But very much you cannot sniper PPC, from my understanding, the way that you can mail or even cold calling or texting or what have you.
And so when we're talking, volume wise, I guess I would assume it's more of a dollar spend with PPC. Can you give us a rough ballpark? What made sense for you guys?
Yeah. Well, the question is, are you running it yourself, or is someone else running it for you?
That
right.
was my
So
follow-up.
we used Bateman Collective.
Yeah.
And so Bateman, I want to say we were spending $6,000-7,000 a month plus their fee, which was another couple $1,000, maybe $2,500 or something on top of that. So we were pretty close to $9,000 to $10,000 all in, which I think that's minimum in my opinion. I think if you're doing 15 or 20K a month, you can really get some good stuff. And obviously you could scale more beyond that. Could you do it with $3,000 a month or $2,000 a month? Yeah, it's very possible that someone could have success with that. But can you find those diamonds out of all that coal with a relatively smaller number? Maybe, maybe not. So that's my general thoughts, and having had the experience. I think as we look at that on a go-forward basis, we might look at it again at some point. But I think, again, I just felt we were too scattered, and we really just needed to focus, which that does not allow you to focus at all with PPC. You get pulled 1,000 different directions with so many different properties.
And I just want to be clear for the audience, when you say you want to stay focused, is that geographically you want to stay focused, or the kind of properties that you want to stay focused on, or is it both, or
both?
Help me understand.
Both. So in this world today, for us, in terms of where we are as a business, where we have a fair amount of recurring revenue, and we're trying to do more with less, we really feel like we want to be specialists in the business. So we've done business in probably 25 to 30 different states, and PPC only added onto that total. And there's certain areas that lately have done better for us. So it's like, let's go back there and learn from our successes, rather than just trying to keep on reinventing the wheel every month or every 3 months or every 6 months in terms of where to go. So really dig our heels in the ground and say, these are our 4 or 5 states, rather than 25 of them. And within those states, these are, the counties that are working best for us, which then maybe we can have one title company we go to all of the time, rather than having 10, 15 different title companies we're dealing with, which we had dealt with several national title companies, but could be a story for another day. But that's very much where we decided, hey, that way we can find more opportunities. We want to find more realtors that can be that sniff out deals for us, as well as have the same team that we can use over and over and over again as we get established. But in multiple places. We're thinking bigger than just one state. We do want to have 5, 6 states, something like that we really dig hard into those places. And that might switch from time to time, but the idea being maybe we take out one state and add another rather than let's replace all of the states or all of the counties at the same time, which is kind of what we did before.
I like one more question about PPC here with I'm sure you've probably discussed this already, but with things like AI and ChatGPT, pulling a lot of people into those areas to get their questions answered. Like naturally, are I don't know if you ran this long enough, or maybe the agency knows better, but have they seen traffic in general go down? Does that not mean that cost typically goes down? Any insights into that?
Well, I think right now there's one of the things, of course, I think all agencies are exploring that deal with PPC type stuff, obviously, is AI, right? And so things like ChatGPT and Claude and turning on advertising there, much in the same way Netflix turn on an advertising type thing, that's coming for. And I think Google certainly, you see what they're doing with Gemini. They're putting a lot of emphasis into AI. So numbers or not, that's where things are headed as people do more searches in AI versus a normal Google or Bing search or whatever. I don't know if the numbers are different. I can't speak to that, but that's where things are headed. But certainly PPC could thrive just as well in those AI type platforms, as well as I'm sure this podcast is going to be on YouTube, right? Hey, Google still has various ways of trying to get people to interact and click on content to get them to do something that someone wants them to do. So I don't think it's going away at all. It's just going to shift and be different. I think the costs are higher. I think it's seasonality. It's not necessarily the cost per click or the cost per lead. It's the cost per acquisition that I'm referring to of that going up. Perhaps more people are more tech savvy and they're shopping out among multiple people that are doing PPC ads. Maybe there's just less people looking to sell land, or maybe it's because of my belief being that when you and I first started doing land, mail was the only source. Well, now everything we talked about, right, are all viable channels that I could tick off 5 to 10 people off the top of my head that are doing each of these channels. And so people are being hit in so many different ways that before you could just kind of get a needle in a haystack kind of a thing. Your letter just happened to hit them at the right time. Whereas now you have all this multiple media hitting the same people potentially with now some of these tools like the Apke brothers and some of their Healy's thing, where you can target specific properties based on wetlands or no wetlands. That's made 1 million parcels into a much smaller market of 200,000 or something like that more people are concentrating on marketing too. That's my beliefs. I don't have numbers to back up any of this stuff, but as I think about it and process it, I believe that to be true.
Yeah. Let's quickly touch upon mailing. Seems to have stuck with you guys. You might have turned it off for a little bit. Is that true that you guys stick with mailing? And I'm curious also, what do you keep an eye on when it comes to your mailing?
Yeah, for sure. So going back to October, excuse me. So I was on a mastermind trip that Seth Williams, our good friend from RE Tipster, and myself led. And at the time, I really came out of that convinced that we needed to really lower our costs. And so the ways to do that, I felt, was to do on-market subdivides and messy title that involved a lot of cold calling type stuff at that time. And so that way, hey, it could be very, very cheap way to acquire. And so we really went down some big rabbit holes, and with the on-market subdivides, we started getting into probably December, something like that, when we really started scraping and getting into looking at on-market deals based on various criteria. And it took until February where we closed. So we had a contract in January, and then we had a few other under contract, and some of those fell through. Right now, though, we have another 5 So we haven't mailed this whole time as we have all this stuff under contract. And so the hope was maybe on market could provide enough that it provides that to us. Well, unfortunately, I think a lot of other people are thinking the same way. And so we are getting some stuff under contract.
Yeah.
It does take time, effort, energy. Whether you're doing AI or not AI, it still takes time and effort to figure this stuff out and then end up negotiating and whatnot. So we decided for sure as we were talking April, May, something like that of this year, hey, let's start adding in some other marketing. So as a matter of fact, here in July, we're about to send out our first marketing piece via mail to off-market subdivides to supplement our on-market subdivides. And so our goal being we're going to try and mail out, identify a very small list, maybe 2,500, something like that, in the counties and states, and us being more specialists, right? Hey, here's a very small snipered list of what we're going to go after. And every month we're going to send mail to them, and we're going to try a whole bunch of different kinds of mail to see what works and what doesn't work. And we're willing to spend more per mail piece than you would in a normal mail campaign, because hypothetically, if we spent $10,000 and we made 200,000 out of it, that's a 20 ROAS. Right. So we're willing to spend more money to get there per mail piece. Whereas before, I don't want to spend more than 60 cents to send something out. So that's part of how our thinking has evolved. And much the same way with Messy Title. I personally have been making thousands of cold calls, and we did get some deals out of that effort, but man, it is freaking hard. And so we're exploring other ways, again, the same snipered kind of approach where we're not sending out 50,000 mailers a month. We're taking a much smaller snipered approach to mainly, above all things, reduce our overhead. And number two, just because we weren't getting that many deals. And so we're wanting to get a better return on our money for the ads that we're spending, because that sucker was shrinking way too quick. As a business owner, I'm like, this is not acceptable for us to do. And we'd consider other stuff. I think with something like off-market subdivides, I think things like cold calling, as we have a small list, could be back on the table that we did before. Certainly texting or something like that might be able to be back on the table. But I feel like those are much harder leads to work with. I would rather do mail, which is more safe. Same thing with PPC. It's much more white hat versus texting and cold calling, that I know people that have been sued and have had to pay thousands of dollars. One had a class action lawsuit on him for some of the activities that happen with dropping RVMs or cold calling or texting or whatever. So that's I'm not entirely opposed to it, but if I can make mail work and have it make sense, I would much rather do that or PPC than some of those other methods. I
do like the whole approach that you're taking here. You're calling it, you're being very snipered, very deliberate. And to me, you're basically front loading a lot of that work, understanding your list before you mail it out to that list. And essentially, my assumption here is that marketing piece is going to speak to that messaging, is going to speak to that sort of type of product, the kind of properties that you are going to acquire that you may end up subdividing. Is that true? Are you tailoring that message on there? And I don't want to put you in the position of sharing what you're actually doing, but maybe you can just expand. Is that something you're really thinking about?
Yeah. Well, it's number one question, how do you get people to respond? Right? So what's going to get people to see the marketing and respond back to you? So that's question one that we're exploring, which, I don't have any answers yet. I have lots of theories, but I don't have any answers yet as to what works and what doesn't work. Sure. So, we're looking at mail pieces that might cost $3 or $4 or $5 a mail piece to get people's attention and get them to respond. We're looking at just a regular, normal letter at 60 cents. We're looking at the handwriting stuff. You know, we're looking at many different ways to get people to respond.
Sure.
Some of those might speak directly to a person. You know, you can do all kinds of cool stuff nowadays to kind of research people. And with the AI, you know, I think Callan Faulkner has done a great job of showing some of those tools in her course, which I haven't taken, but from what I understand and knowing Callan well, you know, I'm sure there's ways you could really tailor letters to people that really could speak to them. Initially, we're not going to be spending a bunch of that research time on people. We're just going to do things to get people's attention and try and get them to respond, kind of a deal. And we'll start with cheap and we'll go to something more expensive. And then, you know, we'll go back and forth and test out and see what works and doesn't work. Yeah. So that's the general idea. I don't have the answers, but I have a lot of things I want to test and try and see what happens.
Cool. All right. So you heard it. Dave wants to narrow down his mailing, get really targeted. And this is the trend that we're seeing. We're seeing people doing the upfront work with their list, really honing in on that marketing message. One of the few things that we've seen perform really well is having a really tight messaging, whether it's the kind of product that you're purchasing or you're acquiring, or why they have inherited the property or why they have the property in the first place. Knowing your list and who you're marketing to is so important. And these are what we're seeing the sort of serious land operators make big strides at. I've had multiple other guests, Dan Habercost, you know, we've heard here with Dave, Mason McDonald. These guys are heavy hitters with mailing, and that's what they're doing. It's so important to get an understanding about your mailing and segment that mailing. This can all easily be done inside of Pebble, creating separate campaigns. Targeting your campaigns, creating the messaging in there, targeting the messaging, having high-performing map images. These are the kind of interrupters that will get people looking at your mail to get a response. Not only that, we don't want you to send more mailing. What we want you to do is send more impactful mailing and actually, in turn, actually send less mailing. And you're going to be able to do that when you actually have insights. As you can understand here with Dave, he is testing. Which mailers are working? What's the response rate? What's your return on ad spend? What counties? What areas? You know, what lists? These are important insights, and this is all built in to the mailing of Pebble. Pebble is a fully closed loop system when it comes to mailing. What that means is when you mail through the platform, everything gets tracked all the way to the lead and whether the property was acquired and if a deal came out of it and if it was sold. The entire lifespan of that lead or that owner or that property, actually it should be the property, gets tracked, and you get a much clearer picture on where you should be spending your money. Most of these mail houses ultimately want you to send more mailing. There's no fine tuning. There's no insights. There's really no understanding of what's working. Ultimately, we want you to make sure you have an understanding of what works so you're spending your dollar correctly. Every dollar counts here. So if you want to learn more about the impact we're making with the mailing for land investors or for those that are looking to acquire land, whether it's developers in the renewable space and in whatever kind of space, head over to pebblerei.com/demo. You can find a time there, hop on a call with me. Would love to share a little bit more in terms of how you can really hone in on your mailing and get effective mailing and some of the patterns that we're seeing that perform really well. All right, I'm going to shut up now. Enjoy the rest of this episode here with Dave Denniston.
7 years doing the podcast? It's been a minute.
We've been in this for a while now. Awesome. All right, Dave, we'll see you around soon again. Thank you.
All right, see ya.
Take care.